What up, what up? We're back after a little break and vacation. Today we are talking about the Black Museum, specifically the episode A Tin of Weed Killer. Black Museum was a show that we'd talked about before that was hosted by Orson Welles. It went from 1952 to 1953 on the Mutual Network and then was later broadcasted um, on Radio Luxembourg in 1953, and then in 1991 BBC reran the series. It was produced by Harry Allen Towers, who was a prolific radio writer, and also later on in the 60s, I believe 1961, he was accused of running a vice ring with his girlfriend in a New York City hotel, and he fled without paying bail and went back to London, where he was based, and became a movie producer. He made a lot of the Fu Manchu series that was popular, starring Christopher Lee, and he also produced the 1970 Count Dracula, starring Christopher Lee. And if you're a horror fan out there, I know what you're thinking. London, Dracula, Christopher Lee. It's a Hammer horror production. This is actually, as far as I can tell, the only time that Christopher Lee played Dracula, and it was not a Hammer horror production. But in any case, the episode that we're talking about today is A Tin of Weed Killer, and it's a pretty simple story. Again, with Black Museum, the entire thing that they're doing is the Black Museum in Scotland Yard is a collection of all of these items that were either used in a murder or somehow in relation to how the crime was detected or solved. So this particular case is pretty cut and dry, or this, particular story, where it's pretty much just about a story of a woman who is murdered because her wine is poisoned. The entire first part of the story, they're kind of talking about answering the question that does the poison in a weed killer degrade over time, or does it stay stable and just is effective? In this case, a weed killer that used arsenic. Spoiler alert in this story, but it's true crime, so there's really no spoilers. He they basically, everybody in this town knows he did it, but nobody can prove, or at least that's the general consensus. And these are really interesting because I always want to try and look back and find the actual case. It's really hard to do with Black Museum because Black Museum is very much a dramatized version of it, told from, kind of more the perpetrator's side of things. So they take some liberties with it. I mean, it's Orson Welles. Why would he not? But there was a show that came out actually the year before Black Museum, and that show was called Whitehall 1212 or Whitehall 1212, and that is the phone number of the Black Museum in Scotland Yard. That number was introduced in 1932. Before that, it was apparently Victoria 7000. But either way, this series, made the year before, and spearheaded by NBC writer Willis Cooper, who we just talked about last time. That was the guy that Lights Out was his brainchild, among many others. He put this show together, and it was actually hosted by the chief superintendent and curator of the Black Museum. So this one is, apparently they do a lot of the same stories, or at least like the same cases. They focus on those, but the difference being is that Whitechapel 1212 is more from the side of the police. So I do want to listen to those and see if maybe it's easier to dig up some of the actual, reports and cases of what happened, because it would be interesting to see how accurate they are. At least with the information, trying to look up, the full names that they give in the Black Museum, couldn't find anything. But, it's also about somebody who he had a trial and he was, not guilty, but everybody thinks he was. So I don't know how far they go to protect names in this case at that time. This was 1952. Who knows? But yeah, so check it out. Black Museum, a tin of weed killer, and then I'll make a stop sometime on Whitehall 1212 and see what that's about. All right, till next time.